Hello, everybody. I'm Terry Owens with the District Department of Transportation, better known as DDOT, and welcome to DDOT Delivers. Each week, we take you inside the agency for a look at what we're doing to serve residents and visitors of the District of Columbia. Today, we'll be discussing the District of Columbia Power Line Undergrounding initiative, better known as DC Plug. The project reflects a partnership between the district and Pepco to improve the reliability and resiliency of the District of Columbia electric system by placing select systems underground. Our guest today is Anthony Soriano, a supervisory engineer with DDOT, but first, this background.
The District of Columbia has experienced more violent storms in recent years, resulting in extensive power outages. For this reason, the district and Pepco are working to reduce power outages by moving many of the overhead power lines underground to improve the infrastructure and enhance resiliency. Neighborhoods affected by construction will be notified well in advance of the project start date. This will include the posting of no parking signs. Construction will begin with the coordination of streets and sidewalks impacted in your neighborhood. Signs will be posted, and flaggers will direct vehicles and pedestrians around construction crews. Before any digging begins, other existing utility lines that may be in the path of construction will be carefully identified and marked in the field. In some cases, small plants, trees, and grass will need to be removed from public spaces to allow for digging and placement of new underground equipment. But we will do our best to retain as much vegetation as possible. Any public property disturbed by this work will be restored to its original condition. Construction workers will use asphalt saws to cut the pavement. A backhoe will dig a trench for the placement of the distribution line. Periodically along the main primary line, manholes and tap holes will be required to house equipment and to provide access for inspections and repairs. The backhoe will also be utilized in these cases to excavate for these structures. In order to meet jurisdictional safety requirements, shoring will be provided in the trench to ensure stability. Pepco uses either fiberglass or plastic PVC conduit to protect underground power lines. Concrete will be poured into the trench to encase and secure the conduit, and steel plates will be placed over the trench temporarily to make the road usable to vehicle traffic. After the concrete is set, the steel plates will be removed and the trench will be repaved in sections. Transformers, switches, and other ancillary equipment will be set in place. Equipment such as transformers and switches will be installed either in the roadway or the sidewalk, depending on space availability. Underground cable will be installed. Landscaping will be restored as needed and roads paved. Overhead primary electric wires will be removed from poles, but secondary service and communication lines will remain. Finally, the new underground power lines will be energized. While electricity will remain on throughout the project, there will be a short scheduled outage needed to switch from the overhead lines to the new underground system. We appreciate your patience while the District and Pepco improve the future of electrical service for the District of Columbia residents.
Anthony, welcome to DDOT Delivers.
Thank you, Terry.
We've got a great overview here. Why don't we jump right in? Let's start with a partnership with Pepco and why that was important to get this work done.
Well, absolutely. So as you may be aware, back in 2012, Mayor Vincent Gray at the time, after a series of serious storm events that put many people out of power for extended period of times, developed a task force. Put that task force into place to come up with answers to the power outage problem that was happening. And through that task force, it was determined that a partnership between Pepco and DDOT would be the best way to address that problem.
For people who don't recall, how serious were the power outages that the district was experiencing?
So there were people that were experiencing days-long outages during those storm events. Very serious.
Days long. And if you've ever lost power and you're not fortunate enough to have a generator, you know that can be a very daunting and challenging situation. So with both the district and the utility bearing the cost of this project, when can we expect to see work finally begin?
Well, great question. There were some serious delays associated with the program back when it was getting started. There was the initial financing piece that was put in place through the legislation. However, it met some legal challenges that has delayed the program. So I know that we're very interested in getting this program off the ground, and we're excited to say that we've issued a notice to proceed to Fort Myer Construction Company for our first standalone feeder undergrounding project, and that date is May 28th of this year.
Fantastic. That has been a long time coming for a lot of people, and I know you guys are anxious to get the work going. How do you decide which areas to target for this work?
So the basis of this program is in wards 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. These are the wards where the majority of the power lines are existing above ground. Wards 1, 2, and 6 are primarily underground and account for about half of the system in the district. So those wards, those exterior or peripheral wards, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8, have extensive tree cover and the existing overhead wires that are very susceptible to outages during major storm events.
And that's where most of the damage occurs, down trees, taking out power lines?
That is correct. And additionally, there could be underground systems that are affiliated with these above ground. So even though you might have an underground system, you could still experience outages.
Okay. And so where is the work going to begin? Which ward?
So Ward 3 is going to be our first project, and it's in the American University Park, Friendship Heights, Tenleytown neighborhood area. And that work is expected to take just about a year from beginning to end to, full restoration of the roadways.
Okay. How many homes are we talking about being impacted here?
This project will have several hundred homes, not quite 1,000, but several hundred homes will be benefited from this particular undergrounding project. This is the Feeder 308 project in Ward 3.
Okay. And so you mentioned impact to roadways. I imagine parking may be impacted. How do you message that so the community knows what's coming and they're fully engaged?
Sure. So standard to any DDOT project, there will be advance warning and notification to residents. We've conducted numerous community outreach events in advance of the project. The contractor is responsible for posting the 72-hour notice no parking signs in areas that they're going to be working in. There's going to be regular outreach, whether it's a door hanger, notifications through the program website, but we'll be in constant communication to make sure that everybody's aware of any impacts that they may experience during the project.
Are there any special provisions being made for either seniors or people with disabilities?
So we would work as we would on all of our projects and make sure that no matter what category you fall into, you will be, accommodated at the best of our ability throughout the project.
Okay. We are talking with Anthony Soriano. He's a supervisory engineer with the District Department of Transportation. He's working on the DC Plug initiative, and it is one that is fast approaching after some starts, but it is here now and is expected to dramatically improve conditions for a number of residents in the district. We'll talk more about that when we continue our discussion right here on DDOT Delivers. Stay with us. We're back in just a moment. Welcome back, everybody. This is DDOT Delivers. I'm Terry Owens. Our guest is Anthony Soriano, Supervisory Engineer with the Infrastructure Project Management Division at DDOT, and he is one of the folks leading the charge on the DC Plug, which is a huge undertaking that's expected to create lots of opportunities also in the contracting community. Anthony, give me some idea of the kinds of steps that you guys took to make sure that everybody who wanted to be involved in this project had an opportunity to do so.
So part of the goal of the program is to have 100% of our construction contracts go to district businesses and also have as many district residents be hired for the program. So there is specific legislation in place that allows us to procure directly to the CBE community in the district to get those district businesses performing on the various contracts associated with the program. Pepco also, outside of legislation, has created a capability and capacity program, which allows them to bring in some smaller CBE type construction companies to learn their processes, which will allow them to be either subcontracted on the larger companies' work. So there's a lot of effort going out to make sure that district businesses and district residents are benefited through the program.
Talk about the significance of these extra efforts being made by the district and Pepco to create this kind of opportunity to folks who might not necessarily get this opportunity.
Sure. So normally, a standard DDOT construction project is federally funded and will have a DBE goal, which is a disadvantaged business enterprise goal established. And typically that number could be in the 8 to 15% range. Many DBEs are certified business enterprises, which are the district-based businesses. Our program is, again, looking to contract 100% of our construction projects to the CBE community. And additionally,
that's huge.
Absolutely. And additionally, we have our architect and engineering contracts, which will provide the design piece to these to the program. And we are currently including the CBE set-aside as a part of our procurement process for that contract as well.
What kind of jobs are we talking about here?
Well, when we're talking about the construction work, it can go from a standard laborer up to an operator of an excavating piece of equipment, supervisors, superintendents, foremen. In the design world, you're dealing with civil engineers that are working on the exact location of these lines in the roadway underground where they'll be placed. There's so many different opportunities associated with the program, really.
Okay, and the total project, you said the initial work in Ward 3 was going to take about a year. All told, how long is it expected to take this project to be completed?
That's right. So the DC Plug program is broken down into currently 3 distinct biennial plans as ordered by the Public Service Commission. The biennial plan, we're working on our first one right now. We're in the process of our first biennial plan, and that includes 6 total feeders. We have the feeder 308, which was designed previously during the first go-around of the program. There's Oregon Avenue has a portion of feeder 14900, which is what we call an opportunity project because we're actually piggybacking off of an existing DDOT project. Then there's 4 other feeders that need to be designed, and then following design, we'll go into construction procurement, and that's all part of the first biennial plan. Now, even though the word biennial is in there, this isn't going to be done in 2 years. It's going to take many years, and especially with subsequent biennial plans being submitted to the Public Service Commission. So overall, I would expect this plug program under the funding that we have currently planned to last until about 2026.
Wow, okay. And at the end of all of this work, are the days of power outages done in the District of Columbia?
Excellent question. Unfortunately, we cannot make that guarantee. And one of the things to reiterate is that the lines that are getting undergrounded through this program are the primary feeder lines that exist at the top of the utility poles. Your secondary and service lines that run to the homes, they're going to remain above ground. We would have loved to have included those in the program. However, it was cost prohibitive to do that. Additionally, you're going to have your communication lines, Verizon, those sort of lines would still be existing on the poles. So we're not going to be removing the poles completely either. Again, it would be the primary lines at the top of the poles, those gray, silverish cylinders, those are the transformers. Those would also be undergrounded as part of the program.
As this technology continues to evolve, what does the next iteration look like?
So we're looking to increase from 6 feeders in the first biennial plan to get into 10, perhaps 11 in the second biennial plan. We'll also be having to monitor just the funding overall. There is a chance at the end that program goes so well that after this initial 3 biennial plan piece that it's decided that we could continue further.
The bottom line for everyone here is their ability to have service in the event of these natural disasters and other things. Will there be any difference in service once the new underground power lines are in place?
Aside from less instances of outages as the goal of the program, there won't be any difference in the service provided. We will have the need to cut off power when they make the ultimate change from the above ground to the underground, but notification will be provided when that occurs. That would be the only real disruption associated with the planned disruption associated with the program.
What does Pepco anticipate those outages to look like? How long a period of time are we talking about?
So it would be a day, over the course of a day. They would do it over, sequencing and not have a major impact like the storms would.
Okay, you guys have really worked hand in glove on this project. Talk about what this experience has been like for you.
Well, this is something like I've never experienced before, really, and I don't know if there's been a program like this instituted anywhere else, where the utility company and the Department of Transportation are partnered so closely on a program that really, we couldn't do it without each other. And the team that Pepco's put together has been a great, assistance and counterpart throughout this whole process. And because of the length of the program from the beginning, there's so many people that are at DDOT too that have been involved that still, although they may not be part of the program currently, they still have a wealth of knowledge and have definitely helped me along the way.
Yeah. If somebody wanted to see a schedule of the work as it's expected to roll out, is there a place where folks can go for more information?
Sure. There's some high-level information available at the DC Plug Info website. It's dcpluginfo.com. Additionally, there's a much more detailed schedule that was submitted to the Public Service Commission. There's a link to that schedule also found on that DC Plug Info website.
Yeah, very quickly, just touch on the role of the Public Service Commission in this. I think most people, depending on how closely you followed it, the PSC has been actively involved, but a lot of people look at it and they see DC or they see the district and they see Pepco and not so much that other entity.
Right, so the Public Service Commission is responsible for essentially the oversight of the utilities and the work that they're planning. Also, they make the ultimate approvals to the rate cases that are submitted by the various utilities. The Public Service Commission is responsible for reviewing our biennial plans that we submit. We base the feeders that we want to include on historical information and cost benefit. The Public Service Commission looks at at all this information and ultimately has the say of whether or not our submitted biennial plan is appropriate to move forward or whether or not changes have to be made to it. So they do a really good job of making sure that the work that DDOT and Pepco are doing together on this DC Plug program is beneficial to the residents and those impacted.
Is this program going to mean higher rates for people?
There will be charges noticed on the individual bills. There's a portion of funding that's coming directly from Pepco. That's in the amount of $250 million for this program. And that, I believe, will result in maybe 15 to 20 cent per month increase based on an average of, I think, 650 kilowatt hours. And then the portion that is being funded by the district is also recoverable, and that may be in the $1 to $1.50 range. These will be very clear to see on an individual's utility bill.
When you say recoverable, what do you mean?
Essentially, that means that the funds that are being used are able to be charged to the consumer, the ratepayer, and that was the way that the funding mechanism, as introduced in the legislation, was determined to work.
Well, as we improve our efficiencies, there generally is a cost involved, and so we'll see where it winds out. We're talking with Anthony Soriano about the DC Plug initiative that is fast approaching. We are going to be breaking ground here fairly shortly, if not already by the time this program airs. And we'll take a break, come back, and wrap things up right after this. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Terry Owens, and this is DDOT Delivers. Our guest today is Anthony Soriano. He's a supervisory engineer with the Infrastructure Project Management Division at DDOT, and we've been talking today about the DC Plug, an initiative that's going to underground some power lines in certain wards around the district as we move to strengthen that infrastructure. And one of the questions as this construction gets underway is the kinds of things you're going to be able to do to minimize the impact on traffic in these different communities. What are you guys doing there?
Well, each of our projects is going to have a very extensive traffic control plan. The work is also going to be staged so that it's not occurring over a long linear space in the roadway. The amount of work that can be done in a given day by a crew that's working on excavating, putting in conduit, backfilling, you're limited to the amount of space that you can work in a given day. But because of the footprint of these projects, we have the ability of putting multiple crews in various locations so that overall impact in certain areas is minimized.
Okay. This will also have the potential to impact some landscaping, some trees. What are you guys doing to mitigate damage there and restoration once you're complete?
That's right. So during the design of Feeder 308, which is our first standalone project, and then with any of our other designs, we were working closely with the Urban Forestry Division of DDOT to make sure that we evaluate conditions of existing trees, avoiding any impacts to those that are in good health, but recognizing that there could be some that are in bad shape, that we can put our underground infrastructure in those locations. So UFD, again, the Urban Forestry Division, is helping us greatly during the design. And then there will be impacts to, perhaps the various landscaping features. But as a part of the program, it's our job to restore back to the original condition in any areas that we impact.
You said something earlier that I wanted to pick up on. You talked about the synergy that exists between the district and Pepco on this project, and your words, you've never seen anything quite like this in terms of a partnership. Say more about that and why that's so significant.
Well, when we look at this program, we have the majority of the civil work is being undertaken by DDOT and DDOT contractors. However, there's the electrical work that has to follow, the installation of the equipment and the pulling of the lines. And the way that the DDOT work is put in place, we want to, again, minimize the impacts on the community. So there's specific areas of each feeder project that have to be worked and completed so that Pepco can come in right behind and do their installation, so that we're not looking to come through with DDOT work and then once we're complete, then Pepco comes in and does all theirs. We're going to be able to work in tandem on these individual projects as well.
And so that minimizes the impact on the roadways, parking perhaps, and all the things that go into the disruption that goes with construction, I imagine.
Right. We're always going to, try to minimize the amount of inconvenience that we have. And by doing this planned civil work to allow Pepco to follow, it'll assist with that.
All right. One of the things we do on this show each week is drop the veil, if you will. And we just talk with our guest about a little about your journey, how you got to DDOT, what your background was like, when you decided transportation was a right fit for you. So many people out there interested in the agency. It's one of the largest in district government. Lots of opportunities there, and yet most people don't know about all the opportunities there. Tell us a little about your journey. How did you get there?
Sure. So When I was in college, I was studying civil engineering. I always enjoyed math and science, and engineering seemed to be a good path for me to go. I was fortunate enough in my freshman year to get offered an internship working with the municipality. Now it's the municipality of Princeton, but at the time it was Princeton Township in New Jersey. They had an in-house engineering department that did projects, similar to what's done with DDOT here at DDOT. Roadway reconstruction, other public works on a different scale than what's happening here at DDOT. But that's where I got my real first taste of the engineering world. And I had spent several years working there, decided, let me try something different. I went into the private sector briefly and worked for a heavy civil construction firm in this Northern Virginia area. Was able to work on certain DDOT projects during that time. But then an opportunity came around at DDOT. I remembered how much I enjoyed working in the public sector, interacting with the public on a regular basis in that role, and was fortunate enough to get hired by DDOT. Now, there's another interesting story that my mom tells where I was about 3 years old and I was at church with her, and I don't know exactly what I was doing, but a gentleman in front turned around and looked at my mom and said, your son, he's going to be an engineer. So I guess it was at that point that...
Interesting. So talk about the difference between the public and the private sector.
So, I think... in my experience, you in the private sector are definitely concerned about doing a good job, doing it right, doing it quickly, but also to make sure that you're financially benefited from that. In the public sector, there's definitely a financial aspect, but it's getting the best product, but doing it at the best cost so that you minimize the financial impacts on the constituents.
And what's the community's reaction to this project been? You've attended your share of community meetings. What are you hearing from the public?
I think with the history, they're finally extremely excited that we're actually getting some shovels in the ground. But even throughout, the idea that we're going to be able to improve the resiliency of the infrastructure for several residents, I think everybody is really on board for the program. Understanding that there are going to be some inconveniences, parking situations and all, but it's very temporary in the long scheme of things for the overall beneficial impact of this program.
I was going to say, at the end of the day, we're going to put this infrastructure underground, eliminate some of the hazards that go along with dangerous weather, and hopefully improve the resiliency of this grid for the District of Columbia. Are we seeing this in other communities?
There are other communities that are undertaking some undergrounding projects. I think they might have it a little bit easier because their right-of-way is less congested as ours. When you look at what we have under our roadways, we have our sanitary sewer lines, our water lines, our gas lines, right? A lot of the communities that are being undergrounded now are planned communities where they can get in early and do this undergrounding work, where here we have a substantial infrastructure that's existing that we have to make sure that we don't disturb or minimize impacts to as we go along with our program.
Has that been one of the biggest challenges aside from the funding issues?
Historically, we worked very closely with Washington Gas on the design of Feeder 308, and before the program had those legal challenges that were mentioned earlier that put things on hold, Washington Gas was out ahead of the DC Plug program to do the necessary relocations of their lines that were going to be impacted by our program, but additionally they identified improvements that they could make to their service and did that in this neighborhood that Feeder 308 is located in. Now, unfortunately, because of the delays to the DC Plug program, we were not able to come in right behind them and proceed with our work. So the residents are going to see a double impact, which we were hoping to avoid by having Washington Gas come first, followed by us immediately. But ideally, in the future designs, we'll look to iron that out now that we have gotten past the legal challenges.
All right, the DC plug, it's finally here. We've been talking with Anthony Soriano. He's one of the supervisory engineers at the District Department of Transportation, and he is running point on this project with a couple of partners, and I know they're excited to finally see us reach this point, as well as the administration. Mayor Bowser has been a big proponent of this, especially for the opportunities that it's created for the contracting community, and we look forward to getting those shovels in the ground. Anthony, thank you so much for coming in.
Terry, thanks so much for having me.
All right. You've been listening to DDOT Delivers. I'm Terry Owens. We hope you'll come back next week when we'll do it again right here on 96.3 HD4 and DCRadio.gov. Have a great day, everybody.